Everyone's got that one friend who loves to tell you about things you've never heard of. A band from the 80s, some incredible Lebanese restaurant on the Upper East Side. You want to hate on them, but damn it if this band isn't perfect to listen to while eating tabbouleh. Well, this is that friend, in video form, about ancient empires. It's the top empires from history that you've never heard of. Originally a union of tribes and kingdoms formed around the 13th century BCE by the Western Colchis and Eastern Kartli, the Kingdom of Colchis thrived in its early years thanks to trade with Greece, and from the 6th to 1st centuries BCE as part of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which allowed Colchis kings autonomy over the region. Colchis was the overachiever of its time. Located on the eastern shore of the Black Sea and largely built on the banks of the Phasis River, the fertility of the region led to them developing advanced agricultural techniques much earlier than the rest of Europe. With dinner out of the way, they developed expertise in the smelting and casting of metals way before the Europeans mastered it, and even had their own coins minted. The kingdom's fabulous wealth was often represented in Greek mythology. It is home of the sacred grove of Ares, Circa the Temptress, and the land of the legendary Amazon women. If you're ever vacationing in the 6th century BCE, Colchis is the place to be. The Liao dynasty was an empire founded by the Catans in 907, stretching across what is modern-day northeast China, Mongolia, and portions of the Russian Far East and North Korea. Traditionally a nomadic tribe, living off their animal herds, what set them apart from previous empires and those of their era was their relative civility. Their intent was focused on ruling rather than plundering. They installed a fixed and stable tax system and developed a written script. They had an equitable relationship with China, which was rare at the time, especially with their religious differences. Another progressive feature in Catan society was gender roles and marital practices. Women were taught to hunt, manage family property, and held military posts. Many marriages were not arranged. Women were not required to be virgins at their first marriage, and women had the right to divorce and remarry. Snaps for Catan! Phrygia was an ancient state located in modern Turkey. The prosperous capital kingdom of Gordium was strategically located at a crossroads where lots of trade occurred. If Gordium sounds familiar, it is because, yes, the kingdom's original founder, Gordios, created the mythical Gordian knot. The story went that the person who knew how to untie the knot would rule over all of Asia, even the world. Alexander the Great would famously come upon this knot a few centuries later and, knowing the story and being a great sport, sliced it in half with his sword. However, the most famous of the Phrygians was King Midas, the subject of the myth that he could turn anything he touched to gold. In a lesser-known myth, the god Apollo gives Midas the ears of an ass for not judging a music contest to his liking. In his later years, Midas opened a car service and repair franchise. Ruling a prosperous kingdom is fun, but there's just something about changing the oil on a Buick. The Kingdom of Nuri was located in modern-day Nigeria. The common date for its founding is 948 CE, but some evidence has been found dating to the 9th century. It was the cradle of the Igbo people, whose culture survives to this day. The citizens of Nuri have the distinction of being the hippies of their time. The philosophy of their society was based on peace, wisdom, justice, and being one with creation. They did not support slavery, so Nuri became a safe haven for runaways, and astonishingly did not use military power as a means of expansion. They would send converts, essentially missionaries, to neighboring kingdoms to have them join. Now that is some impressive door-to-door salesmanship. The ancient kingdom of Saba in modern-day Yemen gets most of its shine from the Bible, where the Queen of Sheba is referenced in several stories, one in which she gifts King Solomon of Jerusalem 120 gold talents, the equivalent of $3.6 million today. In other words, Saba was biblically rich. This is due to being located along the ancient incense routes or spice routes, 1,200 miles of paths that merchants used to transport their goods from Arabia to the Mediterranean, including the highly prized frankincense and myrrh. The merchants would stop in a different town at the end of each day to rest their camels and trade goods, and Saba was the primary beneficiary of this routine. But, like in ancient Route 66, the trails were eventually rerouted, and Saba was cut out of the enterprise's equation, leading to its collapse. The Persian Empire can be broken down into a series of centuries-long dynasties, the first of which was the Achaemenid dynasty, founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BCE. Cyrus defeated and united his surrounding tribes, located in modern-day Iran, and built the world's first superpower, ruling over three pivotal sites of early human civilization: Mesopotamia, Egypt's Nile Valley, and India's Indus Valley. Darius II rose to power 200 years later and led the empire through its most powerful and prosperous period, turning it into a global hub of culture, religion, science, art, and technology, especially in the capital city of Persepolis. He laid the foundations of modern economy and commerce and revolutionized the empire's efficiency and communication when he introduced a standard currency and weights and measures, established an official language of the empire, developed the world's first postal service, and used his province's tributes to build roads and infrastructure. But, as it always happens, the empire's prosperity slipped into decadence and was eventually conquered by Alexander the Great. The Abbasid dynasty flourished from 750 to 1258 CE, while Europe toiled in the Dark Ages. After a violent and turbulent period during the end of the Umayyad dynasty, the Abbasid family emerged and took over as caliphate. They established the city of Baghdad as their capital and transformed it into a bustling metropolis that outperformed the cities of Europe in every standard. Located in the heart of the Fertile Crescent along the Tigris River, it became an epicenter for trade and grew into one of the largest cities in the world during the 9th century. The caliphates built the Great Library of Baghdad, and the studies of math, science, medicine, architecture, philosophy, art, and literature flourished. If the city's colorful, eclectic culture are conjuring images of bustling markets and grand, exotic architecture, you're not alone. The Abbasid-era Baghdad served as inspiration for the fictional city of Agrabah in Disney's Aladdin. Muslim cities became the major centers of learning, and many Christian philosophers and theologians studied Muslim works, and these studies would eventually lead to the European Renaissance. Sadly, the Abbasids did not have a genie to protect them from the invading Christians and Mongols who captured Baghdad in 1258 CE. The number one ancient empire that you've never heard of is also the most mysterious, the City of Teotihuacan, located just north of modern-day Mexico City. Archaeologists believe parts of the city may date back as far as 400 BCE, but the city didn't reach its apex until around 400 CE, before mysteriously collapsing by the early 7th century. By the time the Aztec people discovered the site in the 1400s, the city had laid in ruins for centuries. The urban geography of Teotihuacan is very impressive, making it one of the largest metropolises of the 4th century. The city's layout was arranged as a grid, covering about 8 square miles. It contained around 2,000 single-story apartment compounds, as well as various pyramids, plazas, temples, and palaces. Up to 200,000 people may have lived here at its peak. The main attractions, though, were 3 great pyramids attached to the main street, named the Avenue of the Dead. The smallest was the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, adorned with numerous stone heads of the feathered serpent deity. Next, standing at 140 feet, is the Pyramid of the Moon. And the largest structure in the city, the Pyramid of the Sun, stands at 216 feet tall. Nobody knows who built Teotihuacan. Scholars surmise it may have been neighboring tribes, or it could have been a flood of immigrants fleeing an erupting volcano, but no one can be sure. We know it was a wealthy trade metropolis in its prime, and their priests performed animal and human sacrifices to their many gods. Just as mysterious as its inception, it's unclear why Teotihuacan collapsed. And there you have it, the most impressive ancient empires that you've never heard of. And let this be a lesson to all you aspiring emperors out there. If you work hard, think different, build a technologically advanced city, develop the foundations of modern society in economics, art, philosophy, science, and stay humble, you'll receive your due respect on YouTube someday.